Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and after so many months, or actually even years, of theorizing and speculating of when we could see Mario Galaxy 2 come to modern Nintendo platforms, it has finally happened. We are getting a remaster, a subtle one, of Super Mario Galaxy 2, but it's being bundled with Mario Galaxy 1, and we've actually learned that these subtle remasters, while yes, still subtle, are bigger, better remasters than what you may have thought at first glance. There are some interesting improvements here, and so today what I want to focus on is actually a graphics comparison of Mario Galaxy 2 on Nintendo Switch versus the original Wii version. However, we will be having an overall discussion about this bundle and other improvements we've learned about since its initial announcement a couple days ago in the Nintendo Direct. There's some pretty interesting stuff going on here. But before going forward, I would like to thank you all for the support with my prior video where we did a trailer analysis for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. In that video, I opened up how lately a lot of content creators, myself included, have been struggling because YouTube has changed around their algorithm, and so a lot of creators are no longer having their videos recommended too much, so there's been a significant drop in views. And so I had asked for those who do enjoy my content to make sure you're subscribed, to like and comment and show your support, and that Metroid Prime 4 video started off very poorly. It was ranked 10 of 10, not doing well, looking like it wasn't going to have much life, but your support made a big difference. It has become one of my most liked videos in recent months, and it's gone on to be one of my more successful videos in recent weeks. So thank you all for support, immensely appreciated. But let's now talk about this whole Mario Galaxy bundle situation. So this Mario Galaxy bundle comes with improved visuals, an assist mode, and an additional chapter in Rosalina's picture book for Mario Galaxy 1, but also an entirely new picture book tale for Mario Galaxy 2, and you also can listen to every single soundtrack from both games in the main menu, 154 in total. Both these games are available individually on the Nintendo eShop, so if you're only interested in picking up Mario Galaxy 2 because you may have picked up 3D All-Stars like myself, you do have that option. But I will say we have learned that the remastering that both Galaxy 1 and Galaxy 2 have seen is more substantial than the remastering we saw for Galaxy 1 and 3D All-Stars. It's an even better version of the game. So if you take a look at these two screenshots here, one is from the 3D All-Stars version, and this latest one is from this new bundle that's coming out. And if you pay close attention, you notice where the grass ends off, it looks different. There's a little bit more detail here. And it's actually even changed around. There's a patch of flowers here in the 3D All-Stars version, but in this Switch version, there's some rocks. And also, if you look at the tree, you can see there's more detail with the texture work as opposed to the 3D All-Star version, which is kind of blurry and plain. Even taking a look at the house, the actual tiles in the new version actually have some extra depth there. So there are some noticeable improvements here. Even the wood looks better in this latest version. And I'll show another comparison shot to the introductions for both versions of Galaxy 1. GVG put this comparison together there. I'll have their entire video linked in the description below, but as you can see here, the latest version of Galaxy in this bundle looks noticeably better. You look at this cobblestone pathway here, and it just looks a lot nicer. And so it's not just Galaxy 2 that's seen improvement here, but also Galaxy 1. So if you already have the 3D All-Stars version, I'm not saying it's a substantial improvement, but it may be worth considering for others, especially if you're thinking about just getting the entire bundle. Now, something else I'll point out, on the website, they clarify that there's going to be a free update to this bundle for Nintendo Switch 2, where the games will run at 4K in docked mode, TV mode, and in handheld mode or tabletop mode, they will be running at a clean 1080p. So there is going to be improvements on Switch 2 for free. It would have been nice if Nintendo clarified on this during the Nintendo Direct, but they didn't. Now with that all said, I would like to move on to this graphics comparison I've put together here for Mario Galaxy 2 between the original Wii version and the version on Nintendo Switch. So keep in mind, while I have uploaded this video in 4K, this is just 1080p visuals. I uploaded in 4K to minimize the amount of compression so you can see the game as good as it could possibly look. But there is a better looking version on the Nintendo Switch 2 that Nintendo has yet to reveal, which from what we understand is just a resolution increase, but that should make at least a little bit of a difference here. That all said, we can still see some noticeable differences when we take a look at all these uncompressed screenshots versus similar scenarios I found in the original Wii version. So as we transition from the Wii pic to the Switch footage, you'll notice that in this storybook scene, the edges are faded and blurred in the Wii version, but in the Switch version have a more clean, crisper look while showing a more painterly-like style for the border. But then when we zoom in, we notice with the asteroids there's more clear, defined texture work, but even in the smoke, it's more realistic. But then also taking a look at the tiles on Peach's castle, the tiles are different, they have more depth. And also when we zoom in here to the fences and the wall, we see the mushrooms, and they're more clearly defined with the higher resolution with the Switch version. In this comparison here, there are several changes I've noticed. If you look at the dirt path, in the original version, it almost looks kind of like cardboard, but as you see this transition here, it looks more like your standard dirt path. But now pay close attention to the grass. As you see here, while similar, there is actually a different arrangement in the new version. And this is just another example of new textures they've actually added in for this remaster. Now, some other advantages I'd like to point out here with the improved resolution, as you'll see, in the Wii version, when you look at the house with the windowsills and the door frame, you can see the little jaggies, the aliasing, but in the Switch version, it's cleaned up significantly. And also look off into the distance, we can see all the different planetoids and objects far more clearly. In this comparison here, beyond the obvious clarity boost, I'm noticing that the colors are popping a bit more and the clouds in the background are a bit more pronounced. But also something else I'm noticing here, on the side of the island that we're traversing, it almost looks like there's a little bit more work being done to the textures here. There appears to be a bit more detail that's been applied here. With our first look at Yoshi here, there's actually several interesting things I think are worth pointing out. So firstly, you'll notice just how much more the green pops, so much more vibrant. But something else that's pretty big, this is a cutscene in the game, right? In the Wii version, you would see those black bars. That's no longer here in the Switch version. There's actually a larger aspect ratio. You are seeing more of the environment, and it's not being obscured by the black bars. Now, looking off into the distance, we take a closer look at the volcano, and clearly there are different textures being used here, similar but different. But perhaps what's an even bigger deal, looking off over to the left, the planet off into the distance, as you see, we can literally make out more of the ground textures when it's all the way far out. So this has me wondering, is this because there's an improved level of detail for objects far off? Or is this because they remastered the textures of the planet? Or perhaps both? With this next comparison here, we get a really good up-close look of both the ground texture that Mario and Yoshi are walking on, and also the wall texture with the fossil that they're right next to. And in both cases, as you take a closer look here, you will notice that with the original Wii version, there was kind of like a subtle, spotted texture to a lot of the environment, and it gave it kind of an artificial cardboard-like look, yet in the Switch version with the remastered textures, everything is looking a lot nicer and more natural. Now, another interesting thing I'd like to point out here is that we'll notice that in the Switch version, the camera angle is actually pulled far to the left. And so this is one of the few examples I've noticed with the screenshots and the footage that it may be the case that we have control of the camera far more than we did in Galaxy 1 and 2, but more so like most traditional third-person games, a full-axis camera, which reminds me of what we got with Skyward Sword HD, where they added a similar feature. Next here, I am noticing some subtle but interesting differences. Now, this is another example of the aspect ratio showing more of the environment. We no longer have those black bars, so we can see the ground where Mario is standing on. But looking more closely at the wheel, you'll notice that the wood textures are different. They look a lot better. It's more clear what's going on. And then looking at Lubba's pants, in the Wii version, it almost just looked like a black dotted line for the lining of his pants. But in the Switch version, the texture we see here actually looks like it's knitted in. It looks like there's some depth there, like some actual knitted clothing. With this screenshot and this boss fight, I noticed two elements that are worthy of note. One, and the more obvious of the two, is the hammer. If you take a look at the hammer, it has a more noticeable metallic-like texture to it. Now, something else that's a bit more noticeable is the wear and tear in between the platforms. Perhaps this is simply a product of just the overall improved resolution, but these details are now more apparent. For this next comparison here, as you can tell, I could not even get a similar angle in actual gameplay. So this then leads me to wonder, is this another example of perhaps some extra camera controls in Galaxy 2? Or is this perhaps an example of a photo mode they're going to add to this version of the game? Or could this simply be them using developer tools to get nice looking photos to use for their advertising campaign? But this is another example, and a more obvious one, that there is at least some different camera angles being shown in the promotional material, perhaps hinting at camera controls. Now, what I will say about these screenshots here, though, is that we do get to see that there is clearly like a glare from the sun hitting the wood, and you don't see too much of that in the Wii version, but perhaps you can catch more of that if you can play around with the camera controls. Because there is a little bit of that glare as you run up, but it dissipates as you approach, as you can see at the very top of the Wii version of this comparison here. In this last comparison here, it's really just a great example of how a higher resolution can benefit the overall visual experience. Aliasing is far less of an issue in this Switch version. As you see with the palm tree, the leaves, they're far more clear, the seagulls off into the distance, even Mario's face, it's so much more easy to see. Or we take a look at the tree trunk, and the texture of the tree trunk is far more apparent, and just this overall visual improvement with the different improved textures here and there is leading to an overall improved visual experience, and I'm very curious how the 4K version of this game is going to look on Nintendo Switch 2. When we do eventually get some footage or screenshots of that, you can rest assured that I will be talking about it here. So if you haven't subscribed already and you enjoy my videos about Nintendo news, rumors, and theories, please consider subscribing. But that is all for now, everyone. What do you all think? What do you make of all these comparisons and everything we have learned about the remasters of Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.